Everyone in the neighborhood feared Karen, the tyrannical HOA president who stole packages and fined people for the tiniest infractions. But when one homeowner set a trap with a very special delivery, Karen's reign of terror came to a stinky end. Literally. This is the story of her smelliest downfall yet. In a quiet, picturesque suburban neighborhood, life should have been peaceful. Manicured lawns, white picket fences, and friendly neighbors created an illusion of harmony. But beneath the surface, one woman threatened to make life unbearable for everyone. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. She wasn't just an ordinary HOA president. She ruled with an iron fist, enforcing arbitrary rules with zero tolerance, and issuing fines like they were her personal source of income. Karen had a reputation. She scrutinized every detail of the neighborhood, from the height of hedges to the shade of paint on front doors. A single misplaced garbage can on collection day? That was a warning. A car parked an inch over the designated line? That was a fine. She kept a clipboard, writing down every violation she saw, as if she were patrolling a high-security compound rather than a peaceful residential street. OP, like many others, had experienced Karen's wrath firsthand. They had been fined multiple times for things that barely made sense. A garden gnome deemed too whimsical, a mailbox that was apparently the wrong shade of beige, and once a Halloween decoration that disrupted the neighborhood's aesthetic. But the worst offense of all? Packages left on porches. Karen claimed that unattended packages made the neighborhood look cluttered and unsafe. What she didn't openly admit was that she had taken it upon herself to confiscate them permanently. At first, people assumed it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Karen was picking up packages to protect them from theft and simply forgot to return them. But as time passed and more deliveries went missing, suspicion grew. Confronting her was useless. She always had an excuse, claiming she never saw the package, blaming the delivery service, or even accusing neighbors of lying. She played the role of the neighborhood watchdog, all while likely stockpiling stolen goods in her garage. OP's breaking point came when an important package disappeared, a birthday gift for their younger sibling. It had been marked as delivered, yet it was nowhere to be found. The security cameras facing the street had somehow missed the moment of disappearance. But OP had a gut feeling. They knew Karen was behind it, and this time, they weren't going to let it slide. If she wanted it to act like the neighborhood sheriff, it was time she got a taste of true justice. A plan began to form, one that would teach Karen a lesson she'd never forget. OP was beyond frustrated. Losing a package was one thing, but knowing exactly who had taken it and being unable to prove it was infuriating. Karen had been getting away with package theft for far too long, hiding behind her HOA title and bogus neighborhood safety excuses. Confronting her directly was pointless. She'd just deny everything, maybe even turn it around and accuse OP of something ridiculous. No, this time OP needed proof. Determined to catch Karen in the act, OP set up a hidden camera on their porch. Their regular security camera hadn't been enough. Somehow, Karen always seemed to avoid its view when snatching packages. So OP got creative, placing a discreet recording device in a decorative plant near their front door. It had a clear angle of the entire porch, ensuring that if Karen so much as glanced at a package, it would be caught on film. A few days later, the trap was set. OP ordered an inexpensive item online and waited. Sure enough, the delivery arrived that afternoon. OP left the package sitting on the porch, casually watching from inside. Hours passed, and nothing happened. But just when OP started to think Karen might not take the bait, movement at the edge of the camera's frame caught their attention. There she was. Karen strolled up to the porch with a practiced ease, glancing around as if she were merely out for a walk. She paused in front of OP's door, pretending to check her phone. Then, with a quick motion, she bent down, snatched the package, and briskly walked away, completely unaware that her every move had been recorded. OP grinned. They finally had her. The temptation to confront Karen immediately was strong, but OP knew better than to play their hand too soon. Instead, they reviewed the footage, ensuring it was crystal clear. Karen's smug face was right there on the screen, stealing a package in broad daylight. It was enough to report her, maybe even get her removed from the HOA board. But OP had a better idea. Simply exposing Karen wouldn't be satisfying enough, not after everything she had put the neighborhood through. No. OP wanted her to feel the consequences firsthand. A plan began to take shape, one that would teach Karen a lesson in the most unforgettable way possible. And it all started with one very special package. With undeniable proof of Karen's package theft in hand, OP was ready for the next phase of their plan. Simply exposing her would have been satisfying, but not nearly enough. Karen had been terrorizing the neighborhood for far too long, treating herself like royalty while making everyone else suffer under her ridiculous rules. If she loved taking other people's packages so much, then OP was going to give her one she'd never forget. After some brainstorming, OP came up with the perfect idea: a live skunk. A friend of OP's, who happened to work in wildlife rescue, had experience handling small animals, including skunks. They assured OP that a skunk, if transported properly, wouldn't be harmed in the process. They even had a humane live trap available, which was typically used for relocating nuisance animals. The plan was simple: catch a skunk, secure it safely in the trap, place the trap inside a large sealed box, and leave it on the porch. It didn't take long for OP's friend to find a suitable skunk. The little creature had wandered into a yard a few streets over, and instead of releasing it into the wild right away, they agreed to lend OP a hand with their plan. The skunk, comfortably nestled in the trap, was placed inside a box that had been carefully cut to allow for airflow while still appearing like an ordinary delivery. Now, all OP had to do was wait. By now, Karen had fallen into a predictable routine. Packages left on OP's porch never lasted more than a few hours. True to form, it didn't take long before OP's camera captured her approaching once again. Just like before, she did her usual glance around, ensuring no one was watching. Confident in her stealth, she scooped up the box, tucked it under her arm, and walked away like she had done countless times before. What Karen didn't know was that she was holding a very anxious, very loaded skunk. OP could hardly contain their excitement as they watched the footage in real time. Karen had no idea what she had just stolen, but she was about to find out in the worst way imaginable. OP could only imagine the horror on her face when she opened the box, completely unaware that she was about to trigger a disaster that would stink up her life for weeks. Karen strutted back to her house, completely oblivious to the disaster she was about to unleash upon herself. OP watched the footage in anticipation, knowing that at any moment, chaos would erupt. They didn't have to wait long. Karen, likely assuming she had scored yet another package for herself, wasted no time bringing it inside. She carried it through the front door, into her immaculately decorated living room. White carpet, pristine furniture, and expensive curtains, all of which would soon become collateral damage. The camera didn't capture what happened inside, but OP didn't need to see it. The first sign of disaster came in the form of a scream. A loud, blood-curdling shriek echoed from Karen's house, followed by a series of crashes. A few seconds later, the front door burst open, and Karen came sprinting outside, flailing her arms and gagging violently. Then came the smell. Even from a distance, OP could see neighbors reacting. Windows slammed shut. People walking their dogs covered their noses and hurried away. One unfortunate jogger stopped mid-run, coughing uncontrollably before retreating in the opposite direction. The unmistakable stench of skunk filled the entire street. Karen, now standing on her front lawn, was in absolute hysterics. She was retching, her hands frantically wiping at her clothes, but there was no escaping the pungent odor now clinging to her like a second skin. Her once pristine blouse was now ruined, and her usually perfect blonde bob was disheveled. OP had never seen her look so utterly defeated. The front door remained open, and from where OP stood, they could see Karen's home had become ground zero for the stink bomb. The skunk, in its panic, had let loose a full blast of its defensive spray inside the house. The scent would soak into everything: the carpets, the furniture, the walls. No amount of scrubbing would get rid of it entirely. Karen was in for weeks, if not months, of misery. Neighbors started peeking out of their homes, whispering amongst themselves. No one dared approach Karen, not just because of the smell, but because her face was twisted in pure rage. But what could she do? She couldn't call the police. She had stolen the package. She had no one to blame but herself. And OP? OP simply sat back, took a deep breath through their mouth, of course, and enjoyed the sweet, sweet smell of justice. Karen's humiliation was far from over. As she stood outside, drenched in the overwhelming stench of skunk, the reality of her situation began to sink in. Her house, her perfect, meticulously maintained house, was now a biohazard. The skunk had likely sprayed multiple times in its panic, meaning every inch of her living room was soaked in the putrid stench. No candle, air freshener, or deep cleaning could erase it completely. Neighbors had gathered, some watching from their porches, others whispering among themselves. A few tried to suppress their laughter, but it was obvious that nearly everyone in the community found Karen's predicament hilarious. For years, she had terrorized the neighborhood with absurd fines and condescending lectures. Now, she was the one suffering, and there was nothing she could do about it. OP, still watching from their own porch, decided it was time to deliver the final blow. Armed with the footage of Karen stealing their package, they made their way toward the HOA board president's house. A different neighbor who, while not as ruthless as Karen, had always turned a blind eye to her behavior. This time, however, they wouldn't be able to ignore it. Within hours, word spread. OP sent the video to the HOA board, a few trusted neighbors, and even considered reporting the theft to the police. Karen had spent years making others miserable by enforcing petty rules, rules that didn't seem to apply to her. Now, she was exposed, and there was no wiggling her way out of this one. The fallout was swift. The HOA board held an emergency meeting during which multiple residents finally came forward with their own suspicions about Karen's package theft. With undeniable video evidence and mounting complaints, she had no choice but to step down. The very power she had wielded so mercilessly was stripped away overnight. As for her house, it remained uninhabitable for weeks. No amount of scrubbing could remove the skunk's lingering presence. Professional cleaning services were called, but even they struggled to fully remove the scent. Rumor had it that Karen was forced to stay in a hotel while she figured out what to do next. OP, meanwhile, enjoyed the peaceful satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. No more stolen packages, no more ridiculous fines. Just the sweet, lingering memory of the day the queen of the HOA was dethroned by a very angry, very smelly little skunk.